In this episode of BEA Conversations, we are here to talk with Neeta Lachmandas on transformational experiences. So, Neeta, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So, what do you mean, transformation experiences?
Well, I think I think this is such an opportune moment to talk about transformational experiences because, the fact of the matter is that companies are being forced to change whether they like it or not. So in a sense, transformation is happening, right? So let me give you an example. The bars are closed, but suddenly you see this whole spurt of people who are delivering cocktails, mixing cocktails, and for the person that's receiving it, I was gifted a set of cocktails and I was blown away because it was amazing. Now I can make a cocktail myself. I never knew how to do that. For me, that was a transformational experience because suddenly I was somewhat a mixologist as well. And I really feel that the time of the same old is gone. All of us are facing it. You see people who have been doing whatever they've been doing and tomorrow they may be retrenched. And how do we transform as an economy? How do we transform as people is going to be really, really important. So I think there are a couple of areas that I've been studying and I'm very, very keen on working with companies on. Number one is, how do you create an organization that's agile, and how do you create your own mindset that's agile? I think the one thing that we have learned from this whole COVID experience is that the people who were agile have actually benefited a lot. They have created new revenue streams. They have, perhaps found opportunities that they would never even have known existed because of the disruption. Anecdotally, I was told that there are a couple of restaurants, I'm not going to name names, around this neighborhood actually, that were forced into the delivery business. And then they realized the huge opportunity in Basque burnt cheesecakes. And one of them I've heard is making something like $50,000 in revenue just selling Basque burnt cheesecakes.
Wow.
We hear all these stories of people who have been retrenched and then they've gone into their passion, baking, cakes, whatever, and they've got orders that are longer than they can even manage at this point of time. So unless we're agile and we think and we have an agile mindset, we have been in industries. Take the MICE industry, take the F&B industry. We've been doing the same things over and over and over again for I don't know how many years. And these are industries that are ripe for disruption. And sometimes something like this happens, what some people almost call a black swan moment. You have to disrupt because it is something that perhaps has been accelerated but was on its course anyway. So that's number one. The other area that I'm really, really keen to talk to people and companies about is this whole concept of understanding your consumers and understanding what your consumers want, because your consumers have changed. There's a professor called Joe Pine, and he wrote the book The Experience Economy. I don't know if many people are actually familiar with it, but he said that society and economies have moved. We started with a very agricultural based economy, and then we kind of moved to a very product based economy to a service based economy, and then to the experience economy. And he gave the example of Starbucks, right? So your beans are the product, right? The beans in themselves are cents, and then you move to the service, which was coffee being sold at supermarkets, whatever product comes service, or and then he took it up to Starbucks, which was an experience, right? It's, the reason why Starbucks took off in such a big way, it was because it was the experience of having coffee. It was meeting your friends. It was sitting down over a cup of coffee with your friend. That was actually much more, I think, than the whole concept of the coffee. And he says the next pillar is going to be what he calls transformation. People are looking for transformational experiences. People are looking for an experience which almost changes them. It's a bit of that epiphany moment. And I mean, let me give you an example of something to me that or a company that really gets it. Spotify. Spotify to me is not just music streaming. It's transformational for me. It's transformational because they've created such an intelligent system that keeps introducing new music to me, and they make it painless for me. Go back to the days when we would buy CDs, right?
Yes.
We'd buy CDs for maybe 1 track or 2 track, and how many $20 CDs were you going to buy? But today I listen to all kinds of genres of music because they have made it easy for me to experiment. But not only that, they are constantly feeding me, with new music to listen to, new experiences, and in a way that has transformed me. Spotify has transformed my daughter because she runs a podcast on Spotify. So today, kids her age have an opportunity to have their word out to the world because of a medium, that nobody, because of a medium that nobody, initially saw as that, So when we look at the MySpace, for example, or we look at any other space, I think consumers want to be transformed. They want it to be a moment which gives them. When I go to an event, yes, of course I go to an event to network, I go to an event to meet people, I go to an event to learn. But I also want to go to an event to have a bit of that aha moment, I want to go to an event to be so provoked into thinking, wow, you mean this actually can be done? This is the way to look at it. And I think the MySpace is so ripe for that kind of transformational experience. How do these transformational experiences happen? If you don't understand your consumers, forget it. You're not going to be able to create transformational experiences.
So Neeta, if I were to, so-called pivot or start a new business because my old business models just did not work. So where do I even begin to understand what consumer wants?
Sure. It's not easy. It's a lot of work, right? But the way I look at it, and obviously I work in a research institute which is really looking at service transformation. So I have a model which is really 3E, simple to understand: explore, experiment, and expand. So what does explore mean? Explore means, firstly, you need to understand what is happening around you. Where are the trends? What is changing? So that's number one, and it saddens me when I see so many businesses that are overtaken by events that happen because trends have changed so much, and they keep thinking every year, okay, I'm doing slightly less well, but hopefully next year will be better. And they don't understand that their
data,
surroundings,
and the data that's around.
All the data is around, and that things have changed so fundamentally. So whether it's digital, AI, machine learning, consumers changing, structural changes in the industry, you have to take the time, sit with your people, and really think about what has changed in my business externally. Who are my competitors now? It was really interesting. I went for a course a few months ago, and I met this printing company that I used to work with in my advertising days 20-something years ago.
Wow.
And they were huge at that time. And they were there at this course which was on design thinking. because they were struggling, because year on year their business has been dropping, and then one day they woke up and they realized that, my goodness, our competitors were not our old competitors. Our biggest competitor now is Amazon Web Services. So a competitor has come from where they didn't even see, and people are now doing one. They don't need to print in mass. They can just print one copy.
Yes.
So all that has changed. In the past, their business was all about printing annual reports. Now people don't print annual reports. They give it to you, online, right? And there is this whole movement about save the trees. So they are caught up in something which they didn't even understand what's happening around them. So you need to understand what's happening in your surroundings. The other part of the E is about your customers. You need to understand your customers. You need to explore who your customer is, what matters to your customer, and not just on a superficial front, but really what matters to your customer. How are you going to make that customer a loyal customer if you don't know that customer? And so many companies don't even collect customer data, or if they have customer data, they're not really looking at it in a deep way. So then we come to the experiment phase. Once you have this, you are able to then design little small projects. You are able to then slowly design little prototypes, test it against your customers, and then iterate and refine. And only then can you then, let's talk about some of these MICE events that are happening, right? Small scale events, test, get back to your customers, understand what works, what doesn't work. You can't do that. In the past, when we did big exhibitions, we did big conferences, you couldn't do that. We invested so much. Here is the opportunity with COVID to do something small, test, prototype, expand. And of course, the last phase is to expand. And of course, on the back of it is a system of constantly measuring. Measure what works, measure what doesn't work, and constantly engage your customer, because they are the ones that are going to tell you what works and doesn't work. In the center of this model, of course, is what I call the culture core, which to me is the most important thing. If you have leadership that don't believe in change, forget it. If you have a structure of incentivizing or remunerating your staff that doesn't reward taking risk, doesn't have courage built into it, forget it. So the leadership is really, really important. And how do you create this culture where people are willing to transform themselves all the time? And it's really hard when your business is doing well. It's really hard to say, why would I transform? But you don't know when things are going to turn. So you need to have the willingness and the ability to constantly have one eye on what is innovating around me, and how do I respond, and how do I innovate alongside that. And it's hard. It's not easy to do. And if you're a small business, it's even harder to do.
Can I ask you talk a little bit about agility? Obviously, it's a key attribute to mental fitness now. There's a lot of talk about mental fitness other than mental health. So for leaders who are, keeping that one eye, I think the good thing about COVID is, it really taught us a big lesson in terms of never take anything for granted anymore. So how does a leader maintain that agility when sometimes you feel like, okay, you are doing the explore, the experiment, and then when you're about to expand, the cards falls, in terms of whatever you're trying
Things
to
have
do,
changed.
and then you have to rebuild again. That takes a lot of energy out of you. So how does one maintain that agility?
I think the first thing to understand about transformation is transformation's a journey. So there's no start point and end point. And when we work, we always have this end point in mind. And honestly, at the end of the day, if the mindset is that we're in transformation all the time, and every time we transform we get better, then you don't have that, oh my God,
Yes.
I was almost there and then, I have to now reboot and start again, So I think good leaders really signal to their entire organization that transformation is a journey. They're constantly transforming. That's number one. Number two is transformation is really, really hard. And in all the companies that we study, so many times transformation fails because leaders think, oh, it's the responsibility of this person. So I'll set up a transformation team, it's their responsibility to transform. Or it's the responsibility of this team to transform. And they don't understand that transformation must come from the leader. The leader must be wanting to transform, willing to transform, believing in transformation. So that's the other thing, I think leaders need to signal that for them it's taking risk and a risk-taking mentality. Obviously you take educated risk, right? Is important because that's the way the company is going to strive and stay alive. And finally, to me, the most important thing about agility is about understanding your customers and being customer-centric. If you look at Steve Jobs, he focused on the customer so much, not on the product. He always said, if we get the customers right, we'll be fine with the product. If you look at Jeff Bezos now of Amazon, he is always talking about the customer. It's about it's about understanding what's right by the customer. And I think that building that agility, if you have your eye on your customers, is much easier because it kind of makes you understand that my customers are changing, I have to change. Agile organizations understand that change is a constant.
Do you think those companies like the unfortunate printing company example that you said just now, do you think that perhaps they assume to know what their customer want and didn't change? They didn't have enough conversations with their customer enough to only on the superficial level, are you happy, sad, and never tap onto the deeper knowledge of what could come? Yeah,
I really think that they probably had wonderful relationships with their customers, but I think that they did not really understand the changing consumer. So someone from my generation who consumed in a certain way is definitely different from my daughter's generation, who is consuming completely differently. And I think that they were slow to understand the bigger forces that were playing around them. So when you're in your own industry, you're very focused on your own industry. You don't see what's happening outside of you, right? And a lot of things are shifting. The plates are shifting underneath the surface, and you don't see it until the earthquake happens. And then you realize, oh my God, 10 years have passed, 5 years have passed, and now I'm 50% less revenue every single year, and it's hard to shift. You're in a manufacturing business or printing, whatever, service come manufacturing. I've invested in all this machinery. It's hard. It's hard to think, oh my God, I need to look at a different way of doing things, or I need to change my business model. Credit to them. They are in their 60s and they were at a course for design thinking, and I thought to myself, you know what?
Good
I have
on them.
so much respect for you.
Good on them.
So much respect.
The humility.
Yes, absolutely. So I look at the mice industry, and I look at the fact that we've done so many things because it was the way we've been doing it almost since, I think, after the Second World War. It was like big exhibitions, big conferences, meeting. I don't know how much innovation there really has been in the mice industry. I try to think, and I struggle to think of like major innovation, and I think this is the time that you are going to see major innovation in the F&B industry. It's an industry that has been so ripe for disruption, and you're seeing major innovation take place because they were forced to. They had to redesign menus that could deliver. They had to high-end lux restaurants, right? They had to think, we can't bring the customers in. Our customers are not 1 Michelin star chefs. How do we create something which becomes an interesting experience? So if you look at some of what the restaurants have created, it's really amazing. It's transformational, because now suddenly I can create something like this. I've got the recipe, I've got a way to do it. I think that the opportunities are going to be tremendous. I think the challenges are going to be our own mental blocks.
Yeah, totally.
And the way we have done things.
Yes.
In the past, right?
Yes.
And the difficulty in reorganizing a company is not easy, because HR has done things in this way, finance has done things, and you will keep getting obstacles. And that's why I think the leadership team is just so important.
And I do agree with you. And I think don't wait for the earthquake. Be sensitive enough to the tremors and investigate what that tremor is all about.
Correct.
And also, I don't think that for products and services, it doesn't have to be this or that. If you are good at this, invest in that, and perhaps one day it might shift.
Totally.
To balance that.
Totally.
That risk a little bit.
Totally.
What I want to ask, actually, I'm very interested when you talk about consumer, because many a times when people look at you, they would have assumed that, well, Neeta has drank so many cocktails in her life. Why would she be interested when I send her a cocktail kit? So tell us a little bit about your psyche when you receive that, and as you are putting that cocktail together, what really intrigued you, and how that transformed you as a person that received that experience.
I think that people always think that they know another person, right? But maybe they don't know that I'm an aspiring cook. Maybe they don't know that I have tried, and this is the truth. I have taken down several recipes, and I have tried to mix drinks, and it always turns out a little bit not really
Are you being
good.
too critical of yourself?
No, I'm not. Actually, my husband also says so but I think what all of us are at the heart of it. I think we all want to learn something new. We all want to. We look at other things other people are doing, and we think, wow, wouldn't it be nice to be in that person's shoes for a day? At least for me, I love the art of how drinks come together. How do they make it so beautiful? How do they bring the flavors together? How do they get that balance? Now, when those cocktails were gifted to me, that was lovely. Actually, to be honest, those cocktails, you don't really need to be a mixologist, but I could focus on how do I have a couple of friends over, serve amazing cocktails, and all I have to worry about is the presentation of the cocktails. Suddenly it makes cocktails, which is a fairly complex thing, it brings it down to the level of the simple people, who can enjoy it in the comfort of their home. I don't necessarily always need to go to a cocktail bar to have a nice cocktail. Does this mean that I'm going to cannibalize the business of the cocktail bar? I don't think so. I go to a cocktail bar for a different reason. I go because it's a combinational experience, right? Yeah. So one is an experience, the other is an experience. They just happen to be different experiences. And I think more and more our businesses are going to have to understand that as human beings, we're fairly complex people. We can like multiple different things without necessarily thinking, oh my god, one's going to cannibalize on the other. And if someone didn't make an effort to understand me, understand my lifestyle, understand, you know, what I need, I don't think that they would understand that. The assumption would be, why would I want to send them cocktails, because they're not going to come back to the cocktail bar after, you know. In fact, I think the opposite is true, because, you know, I've been sent these lovely cocktails. When the cocktail bar opens, I'd actually be very interested in going to the cocktail bar and seeing what else they have.
Yeah,
you know,
because it's armed you with more knowledge.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And I think that, you know, all of us need to perhaps start to take that approach.
Yeah. I really like our conversations today. Thank you so much, Neeta, because it is about that transforming of what perhaps may not work anymore. Even when the skies are open up again, people are going to, of course, there will be pent-up demand for what it used to be, but there will be another layer of new demand of what they would prefer now after what they have been through. There
is going to be such a shift. I really believe that. I talk to many people who say, well, things are going to go back to same old, and I find it very, very hard to understand how things are going to go back to same old. Yes, you know, they will retrace back a little bit, and there will be pent-up demand. So initially it may seem like, you know, a huge demand, but I think people have changed. So let me give you, I was talking to a friend of mine. He runs a huge business in events and conferences. And he told me, he said, you know what, I can bring so many people into my conference over Zoom. Why would I need to travel? You know? And I said, but you know, don't you think people want the face-to-face experience, and don't you think people want to? He said, yeah, you know, but it will be done selectively. It will be done more selectively. Of course, my people want to travel, that's fine. But you know, for every dollar that I put into the travel budget, that thought will occur in my mind. Do I need to put this dollar into the travel budget? And what can I extract out of it? Which is going to be a different mental calculus now. And I think, you know, all of us who were in the MICE business, who are in the MICE business, we need to start thinking as well, you know, when we bring someone here for an event, what is the transformational experience that they are going to get, which is not the experience they could get on Zoom or Teams or whatever. And you know, if we don't put the consumer at the center of that calculus, then I think we lose a great opportunity to really do something amazing on the back of this.
I totally agree with you. Your keyword, selective. People are going to be more selective, and I think we, as event organizers or even content curators, you've got to be so good at understanding what that person wants in order to convince the person to want to travel
Correct.
again.